So here you are. It's the middle of the United Nations and you're trying to get an interview with one of the biggest stars in the world. He just won an Academy Award and you want to interview him for your TV show. Who is he? This guy. How do you get him? He's swarmed. There's 200 people surrounding him. He just finished an interview and everybody wants to get his autograph. Everybody wants to give their business card. How can you reach him? You stop. You look at him and you see through the crowd that he's tired. He wants to go home. So what do? You run through the crowd. You run up to him. You grab his arm and you say, "Forrest, I'm gonna get you out of here." And he looks at you like, who's this? Why is this kid touching me? And right in the middle of the United Nations, in a crowd of 300 people, you grab his arm, you look and you say, "Ladies and gentlemen, Forrest Whitaker has to leave the building. No more pictures, no more autographs." And what happens? It's like the parting of the Red Sea. Everyone moves and they listen and they think that you're his bodyguard. You proceed to walk him down the street, talk to him about your project, reach his hotel, get his information, and you're gonna interview him this year for your television show. So how can you interview Forrest Whitaker? How can you speak with the Secretary General of the United Nations in the General Assembly Hall? How can you have a TV show on PBS? How can you do whatever you want to do in this world that's going to have a social impact? 3 letters. NMW. NMW. I know what you're thinking. You're looking at me, you're thinking, "Oh God, I probably have kids older than this guy, and he's coming up here with the text messaging LOL, NMW, LMAOQ, QRST. Look, I'm not a member of Generation Y. I might be 25 years old, but my mom went to Woodstock, okay? I got hippie genes in me. I don't want to pretend that I know any of your life experiences. I don't want to pretend like I have any advice. All I want to do is share with you some universal truths that I've seen on my travels. I grew up in this little place, maybe you heard of it, home to 2.5 million people, 150 nationalities, Brooklyn. And in Brooklyn, everyone lives on a street, which we call the block. And on our block, there's a place where we sit. That's called the stoop. Now this stoop, it's a very special place. You see, my friends growing up were Russian, Irish, Italian, Puerto Rican, Korean, Jewish, Muslim, Palestinian, Lebanese, Greek, Puerto Rican, American. And we all grew up on the same block. And we all hung out on the same stoop. And this stoop, it was our meeting ground. It was our connection point. It was a place where we could come together, have an open dialogue, say what we wanted, and we knew there wouldn't be any consequences down the line from our teachers or our parents or our girlfriends, because we never had any. But still, the stoop was a place where I first learned about valuing difference, about equality. And the reason I bring up the stoop is because I think each of us has a stoop in our lives. In everyone's neighborhood, there's a place, there's a gathering place where you can go and have an open conversation and not be judged, be equals with the people next to you. In some places, maybe it's a laundromat. In some communities, maybe it's a bar. For my 10-year-old nephew in upstate New York, it's a tree. But I bring up the stoop because I think it's crucial for us to develop relationships with people in our lives. Friends, family, clients. Let's say you got an idea for a new sports program that you want to implement in inner city Chicago. Well, what are you going to do? Are you just going to build a basketball court? Are you just going to invest in a football field? No. Go hang out with kids, find out what their stoop is, interact with them, and find out what they want. And we don't come from a place of, "Hey, I'm going to help you, I'm going to fix you, I know what's good for you." No, we come from a place of, "I want to understand what your life is like. I want to understand what your hopes, your wants, your desires are." So the first lesson I learned is that we got to find the stoop. Now I want you to imagine that you're growing up and your whole life, everybody's told you what you're supposed to be. Well, maybe you don't have to imagine, maybe that is your life. But I want you to imagine that your whole life, people told you you were supposed to be an actor. You like being in front of people, right? You like attention. I mean, you're kind of funny. I mean, you should be an actor. And you start to think, all right, I can try that. So you start acting. You get the high school plays, you get a scholarship to college, and before long you book a role on one of the largest television shows on the planet, The Sopranos. So here you are, on set. You finish filming for the day, you knock it out of the park. You with me so far? And as you finish filming, it's the biggest day of your career. You're in the car with AJ, one of the stars from the show, driving back to the city as you wrapped. And you realize that even though you did a great job and it was the biggest day of your career, you're totally unfulfilled. You just feel nothing. So you turn to AJ and you say, why am I in this business? It's so superficial. I mean, what am I doing? I'm trying to book roles. I'm trying to be famous. I'm trying to be seen. Aren't there bigger things that we should be focusing on? Aren't there people dying of poverty in developing countries? And he looked at me and he said something I'll never forget. He said, I don't know, man, I just met you. But he did say, if you want to do something else, why don't you go out there and try it? And for the longest time I didn't, because I had listened to all this noise around me of what everyone else thought I should be doing. The way that I see it, we've got two passions in our lives. One is in our heads, and that's what everyone else tells us we should be doing. And the other is in our gut, and that's what we really want to do. But if we listen to the noise, we kind of sometimes forget what that is. So I learned that it's imperative that we ignore the noise to find out what our passion is. And I'm not only talking about career, I'm not only talking about having a TV show. It could be as simple as sports. You know, maybe, here we go, where's Billy? Maybe Bill is a football player, right? Bill's a wide receiver. Everyone told him, you're fast, you can catch passes, you're gonna be a wide receiver, you're gonna be a football player when you grow up. But maybe Bill doesn't wanna be a wide receiver. Maybe Bill wants to do yoga. Maybe Bill likes I don't know, he likes this thing. He's like, oh yeah, that's what I like. Maybe Bill's passion is yoga. Maybe your passion is ballet. The point is to listen to that spark, to find out what it is. The first thing we've got to do is ignore the noise. And I did. And I went to my dad, and I had seen these infomercials on TV since I was a little kid. Maybe you remember them, the ones with, with the kids in Africa, crying in the streets with flies around their faces, just in the most unimaginable poverty. And I had seen that, and I'd always thought, I mean, is that the real story? What's the real scoop? I want to go there. I want to find out for myself. I mean, I'm from Brooklyn. What did I know? So I went to my dad, and imagine your 20-year-old son or daughter comes to you, and they say, I'm moving to Africa, darn it, because I want to see the world. What do you say? Well, if you're like my dad, who's from New York, we wouldn't be allowed to say that in TEDx. But I went to my dad, and I was on the kitchen table, and I said, Dad, I'm moving to Tanzania. And he laughed, and he said, Chris, do you even know where Tanzania is on a map? I said, yes, they have the Tasmanian devil there. And he said, no, Chris, that's in Tasmania. So, with a little more persuasion, finally my dad did let me go to Tanzania. And I went there, and I met people that changed my life forever. Because what I found is that people were happy in the midst of the most extreme poverty that you could ever imagine. And I remember meeting a kid named Abasai. Abasai was 19 years old at the time. He wasn't able to go to school because his parents couldn't afford the fees. He was living in rural Tanzania, 1 hour from pretty much anything. His teeth were rotting out of his mouth because he'd been drinking dirty water most of his life, because that's all there was. And when I asked Abasai, I said, how can I help you? What can I do? All he said was education. He said, Chris, I just want to learn. I want to be a filmmaker, actually. But I need somebody to teach me how to produce, how to shoot, how to edit. I was shocked that he even knew what these terms were. But it was stories like this that made me come back to New York and share it. I wanted to share it so badly with all my friends. So here you are, 20 years old, and you're back on the stoop, back in New York. Africa's done, but it's probably one of the lowest points in your life because you're going through what people call culture shock. You feel that nobody understands what you're going through. Your friends don't get you. You can't interact with people the same way that you did because of what you've seen. So what do? You start acting again. You're not happy, but it's a distraction. And then you start teaching because people tell you got to make money. I mean, what are you doing? You're out of college. You got to find a job. So you listen to the noise. You start teaching. Again, totally unhappy. And to make matters worse, your father is diagnosed with cancer. Oh my God. And then you think it can't get any worse. And then you have surgery on your wrist and on your shoulder for chronic conditions that you needed to get taken care of. And here you are, 20 years old, going back and forth to the city, going to physical therapy for 20 or 25 hours a week. And you just think, why me? This is totally unfair. This shouldn't be happening to me. I have to have a television show. I got to do this. I got to do that. This can't happen to me. So you call your friend Abasai. Remember Abasai? From Tanzania. And you call him and you tell him your situation. And he says, well, Chris, look at the glass is half full. Yeah, maybe you hurt your wrist, but some people don't have hands. He said, Chris, my father makes $60 a year as a farmer, but he can buy oil to cook the food that we can't grow in the fields. He said, I'm happy for that because some people make $10 a year. Abasai lives in a place where less than 20% of the population is able to graduate from high school. They have to pass a test at the end of primary school, and if they fail, that's it. And almost no one can afford private school. Abasai did the unimaginable. He passed the test. He got into high school, but it wasn't free. And his dad said, you can either go to high school or I'll be able to send your 3 brothers to secondary school. And Abasai let his brothers go to school. And I was speaking to Abasai on the phone, and I said, Abasai, aren't you frustrated at your situation? Don't you want to lash out at the world? I mean, all you want to do is be a filmmaker, go to school, and do the right thing. He said, no, Chris. God put that as a challenge in my life for me to overcome and learn from. Wow. I couldn't believe it. And he continued. I asked him what had been going on in his life. He told me that, he was kicked out of school. He couldn't afford it, so he had to find a job in a chicken factory. He was working 12 hours a day. He made $10 a month. But he said, I saved enough money. I'm going to film school. I got into this film program. I said, that's great. And he said, I've been making films. I've been following my passion. I said, that's awesome. I have a fiance. We had a kid. Oh my God. And then he told me, he said, Chris, on the day that my sister was supposed to be married, my fiance was killed in a motorcycle accident. And I said, Abasai, this is so unfair. I said, how can you push through this? And he said, Chris, I'm going to be a filmmaker no matter what. No, I said, no. I said, Abasai, look at the logic. I mean, this happened to you and why? He said, Chris, I'm going to be a filmmaker no matter what. So I took Abasai's mentality and I started pursuing my passion. I finished my first film, started working with the UN ambassador. The Secretary General invited me to speak at the United Nations. PBS offered me a special for my show, and none of this came easily. It's all because I listened to Abasai's no matter what mentality. My travels have taken me from the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation in South Dakota to Haiti, to Uganda, to Tanzania. Another thing about Abasai, after I spoke with him that time and I had touched base with him 2 years later, after everything had happened in my career, Abasai told me he'd climbed Mount Kilimanjaro 28 times He's filmed for the BBC, for Discovery Channel. His films have been on national television in Tanzania. He's putting his daughter through school, and because Abasai went to live in a ghetto with a family that was addicted to drugs, he saved 2 children's lives and put them through school. Abasai was my hero. And I'd always remember, he said, no matter what. Meet Martin Badwound, a man that's living on the brink of death in one of the poorest places in the United States. 80% unemployment, the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. Martin has a bleeding spleen, a vertebrae sticking through his lung, which makes him cough up blood every day, diabetes, a clubbed foot, high blood pressure. But Martin wakes up every day and he says, how can I help other people? And he fights that 80% unemployment by giving young people on the reservation day labor work. He puts others first no matter what. Just like Secret, my friend from Haiti, who when he lost his home in the earthquake and everything that he had, he was given a new home by a nonprofit organization. But rather than keep that home for himself, he donated it to the community and built a school. Secret puts others first, no matter what. Or maybe Abia, a girl who was 19 when I met her, and her sister was about to die. She was diagnosed with tuberculosis. Abia took her life savings without any hesitation and bought her sister the medicine that saved her life. Abia put others first no matter what. And it reminded me of somebody in my life that had put others first no matter what. My dad. My dad, probably like many of your parents, I'm sure, many people in your lives, puts others first, goes to work, supports his kids, does what he has to do. My dad had never left the country when I asked him if I could go to Tanzania, and I knew that deep down he really was scared to have me go, but he let me go. And I remember my dad all the time, because a week after I finished my first film, I found out that my dad died from cancer. I was with him when it happened. And what I learned through all these experiences is that the people that are the happiest, the people that are the most productive, the people that contribute the most to humanity are people that are able to see themselves in other people's shoes, to put others first no matter what. Do that and you can meet Forrest Whitaker, you can interview the Secretary General of the United Nations, you can do whatever you want in this world to have a social impact.